What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from MTG, the place with the decks, and if there's one thing you should know about me, it's that
I am a man who takes a challenge very seriously.
I am. The other day there was a guy in the comments who, as a joke, was like, do mono white Eldrazi, huh? Do it, yeah. And this other guy was like, let's see what you did there, buddy. There it is. You can read it. It's right there. And you know what? I can do it. It's totally possible. That is a challenge that is doable, I think, in this format. You're like, what? Blah? Yeah, it totally is. I trust me, we can do this. This deck is based on the white-black Eldrazi that's going around right now. That's a really cool deck. If you haven't heard of it, I'll give you a little bit more about that towards the end of the video. But what options are available to us if we cut the black? What do we have just in mono-white? 18 creatures in our mono-white Eldrazi deck. It never gets old. Like, it's always fun to say. Mono-white Eldrazi. We have a couple of things right on the very low end of the curve that aren't available to us in, say, the white-black Eldrazi deck I was just telling you about. Starting off, though, with 4 copies of Knight of the White Orchid. This thing is really, really good in this deck. It ensures that we get a land drop on the draw. That's really, really good. You know, you don't see a card that's good on the draw today, much less a deck that wants to play like huge 10 power or 10 mana dudes. That's good on the draw. This deck does a lot of stuff good on the draw. It's very reactive, you know. But this card, again, just awesome. It's a form of ramp in some ways, if you play it right. That's really good in this deck, and covers the early game for us really well. Again, some of the smaller creatures in the format, which there are a ton of right now. So just everything about Knight of the White Orchid, I think, works for this deck right now, you know. Also, in the lower end of the curve, it's in a lot of sideboards. We're going to move it to the main deck. 3 copies of Aire Cleric. Aire Cleric, like, yeah, I'll totally play this in the main deck. Like I said, we got to make it to the later game, and this is in like every sideboard for any deck that plays white. This is in their sideboard. So let's just move it to the main deck because we're playing against a lot of creature-based things right now. It's a really good blocker and will help our life total out early game. It's already Eldrazi time. 3 copies of Blightherder, 4 copies of Oblivion Sower, and 3 copies of Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. Blightherder, we can process things pretty easily. I'll get to that in just a moment. You probably guessed already what we're doing, but it's not that hard to figure it out. And in cases of emergency, you know, he's a 4/5 body. There's nothing wrong with that either. Oblivion Sower, just really a fundamental piece in the deck. Sometimes, very often actually, you'll play Oblivion Sower and then play the Blightherder. And then Ulamog, you know, is Ulamog. He's just the biggest, baddest Eldrazi. Once you play him, you kind of win the game, you know. It's just, he's a 2-for-1 when you play him and you exile the 2 things, you know. And just when he swings, if he swings 3 times, you win the game. Or twice, really, you win the game. So, just, yeah, to Ulamog is the entire reason to even do this deck. If you're doing the math right, you may notice there's one more creature. I'm really excited to talk about this one. Hilarious in testing so far. Now, you know, green-red Eldrazi gets to play their 7-mana huge thing in a Tarka. What do we get to play, you know? We get to play 1 copy at least. I'm thinking about bumping it up to 2. Of Emeria Shepherd. This is the card for this deck. Emeria Shepherd, we're playing a ton of planes. Obviously, we're mono-white. We might as well take advantage of that. Anything that happens to go to the graveyard, we can get back with Emeria Shepherd whenever we make a land drop. We're playing 26 lands in the deck. That's a ton. We could actually play more. You know, the white-black Eldrazi deck plays 24 lands, and I don't understand that, you know. We'll definitely play at least the 26, if not 27 or even 8. We've got to make our drops. And just with an Emeria Shepherd, those drops become amazing. 14 spells in the deck. What are we exiling with? We actually have something like 16 cards in the main deck that exile, and then 2 more in the sideboard. So yeah, we're playing 4 copies of Silk Wrap, 4 copies of Stasis Snare, and 2 copies of Quarantine Field to get things started here. This is just all the stuff that exiles, and the next card will exile too. Just, you know, these 3 cards seem like they all go together because they're all really similar. Also, we've got Oblivion Sower that exiles stuff for us, but obviously these things are removal, early game removal for the most part. That's really, really important. And obviously Quarantine Field can go the distance. You know, we can play this for 6 mana. That's parity of the Oblivion Ring. We get 2 things out of it. That's really good against a lot of the stuff in the format. Stasis Snare and Silk Wrap just obviously help us cover the early game, especially Silk Wrap, which is just insane right now, you know, all the way up to Mana Strider, we can take out stuff, and Anafenza, you know. So just all 3 of these cards are absolute yeses for the deck. 2 copies of Titan's Presence in the deck. Yet again, the deck is made for this. We're playing something like 10 Eldrazi in the main deck, all of which are pretty big, except, you know, Blightherder can't take out a Siege Rhino or anything if he's in your hand, but he can take out, like, pretty much anything else in the entire format, you know, other than, like, other huge Eldrazi creatures. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The card isn't a great top deck. Later on in the game, we're not playing a ton of copies of it, you know. After we've already played our Eldrazi, it's not that great. So we don't want to play a ton of copies of it, but while we do have that Ulamog in our hand and we're waiting to play it, Titan's Presence is just more or less unconditional removal. So, yes, absolutely. And it processes, you know, it exiles things for us. 2 copies of Planar Outburst in the deck. Obviously, all of our Eldrazi are either at the same spot or higher than this on the curve. So the idea, obviously, is to just Planar Outburst and then go from there. Start playing your huge dudes after you clear the board. Usually it works 9 times out of 10, and later on in the game, which is where we want to be, we can awaken this to great effect. The awaken on this is insane. So yeah, just Planar Outburst. I don't see any reason not to play a board sweeper in the main deck. Even though we are playing Cleric and Knight of the White Orchid, after they do their job, they're not that important for us. So Planar Outburst, yes. And 2 Planeswalkers to finish off the main deck. 2 copies of Gideon right here. Gideon is really good, by the way, the emblem at least, with Blightherder. You're getting a ton of power if you have an emblem out, with Gideon. And he's good just for everything he does, He's good against mass removal, which we don't care that much about. But it does mean that he pairs very nicely with our own Planar Outburst. We can play Gideon 4th turn, follow it up next turn with a Planar Outburst, make a dude with Gideon, and just go from there, or swing him with Gideon himself. So Gideon's just he's too good not to include somewhere in a mono white deck, so here he is. But you don't have the money for Gideon. The deck is fairly cheap without him, and Ulamog's going to cost you money, but that's almost the only thing that costs huge money in the deck, So if you don't feel like playing Gideon, play like Retreat to Emeria, I could see that. Or you could play Hedron Archive in the main deck. I've got it in the sideboard to help us keep up sort of with other Eldrazi decks and with control decks, we can draw cards, that's important. But, I've got Hedron Archive in the sideboard, but if you don't want to play Gideon, I could see playing Hedron Archive in the main. But you can also play Retreat to Emeria because we're playing a lot of lands, 26 lands in the deck, and again, like I said, I can see cutting a card or two and adding more lands. Just because we have to get our drops, we have to get to Ulamog in, we have to play Emeria Shepherd at some point, so and keep playing lands to make her good, But the reason that these funky lands are in there, the Canopy Vista, the Prairie Stream, the Smoldering Marsh is in there just to cover any fetch lands that you get that you can't use otherwise, And if you get a Wooded Foothills, you can get the Canopy Vista, and if you happen to get a Polluted Delta, you can do the Prairie Stream. So you're making white mana either way. So I felt like it was important to put these in, but if you don't have the money for the battle lands, you cut those and just use plains. It's totally possible. Here's a sideboard. Look at it. We got a ton of options, We can still play Arishan Cleric. We'll totally do that. Radiant Purge is awesome against, it could almost be in the main deck. A 1-of Radiant Purge. I really might want to do that because it takes out Manus Rider and offends that Siege Rhino, just some of the most important creatures in the format of Jutai when it swings, So I could see a 1-of Radiant Purge. The Exile is awesome on Radiant Purge in this deck, so yeah. And everything else, Citadel Siege is weird, right? Citadel Siege is mostly in there against, again, the mirror match is important because they're going to play their Ulamog a couple of turns or more before us, so we got to be able to do that, something about that. And Quarantine Field can take care of it on the next turn. Stasis Snare can take care of it at the end of their turn, And Citadel Siege can tap it down. They played a lot of the mirror match. This deck is tuned for that. But still, it doesn't do great in mirror. But it's really good against Abzan, and it actually has some decent game against Jeskai, the 3 decks that I played it against, that's it. But I can see us having a problem against aggro, but that's why a lot of this is against aggro. We got, more removal and more mass removal and stuff like that. What is this black-white Eldrazi jazz I was talking about earlier? I want to touch on that briefly here. The deck looks really good to me, It is able to cut or move Gideon and Arishan Cleric to the side, and it also cuts, Emeria Shepherd, obviously, and Knight of the White Orchid, in favor of playing Utter End for more exiles, and it's a really good card right now. Wasteland Strangler is super excellent and gives us another processing effect, which is just, Wasteland Strangler is absolutely bomb. It's a really, really good card and just makes the deck worth playing black in, We also get access to Read the Bones and Obnixilis, which helps us draw cards, and Obnixilis is just good, period, but mostly helps us draw cards so we can get our drops and just our important cards, We don't have too much of that in this deck. And I can see cutting a couple of things there. A lot of these play 4 copies of Read the Bones. I don't know about that. But definitely the Utter End of the Wasteland Strangler, very, very powerful options for the black-white deck. And I don't have power rankings for this deck yet. It wouldn't be fair, I've only really played maybe a dozen games. It's really not that much. I played a few games against a couple of decks, I just haven't really tested it enough to know what the power rankings are, though it feels like a mid-60s, something like that. Just it feels that way to me. But I'll do a little bit more, and I want you guys to test it out because honestly, if you don't include the Gideons, it's just like a couple of $100, and if you take out the battle lands, it's even less. So it's not necessarily a budget deck, but it's again way cheaper than what you could be playing. I just did Sultai Aristocrats or Sultai White, and that deck is like $700 and something. It's just insane. So this deck is pretty good for the price. That's all I got for this time. Marty Planeswalkers is definitely coming up next. I know it's supposed to do that next, but I loved this challenge and I loved what I ended up coming up with. It was just really, really fun to play with. So I hope you guys liked it. If you did, please just help us out. Hit the thumbs up button. That helps more than you can ever know. And then, comment. I want to know how you feel about this one because I think it's a really, really cool deck and could do really well at an F&M and nobody's going to know what you're up to, So test it out. I think the deck is really awesome and a lot of fun. I'm Deb from SBMTG. As usual, thanks for watching, my wizards.